Hi everyone, welcome back to Chess with Mr. Ray, and this lesson is about calculation. So let's first define what calculation is. So a simple way of defining calculation is basically when you have to ask yourself what's going to happen after you do something. So you make a move, you ask yourself what will your opponent do, and then what you will do. Now, there is a very common mistake in a calculation that players do is they don't calculate deep enough. They stop their calculation too early. And this is what I would like to show you in our first position here. So white is moving this knight to the center of the board with an attack on the queen. It seems to be an interesting and seemingly good looking move, but the problem with it is that we cannot play that move without actually calculating of what's going to happen and what's our final result. So with a simple capture for black in this position, he just captures that knight, eliminating that attack. White saw that, but what white did not see is that after the rook captures back as a supporting piece of the knight, black still, even after that, can capture the rook, and so black walks out as a winner out of this operation. So this is an example of miscalculation on white's part, where white didn't calculate precise enough and deep enough. So I will always use this type of positions as an example of why we need to calculate and what calculation is. It's an ability to think ahead and asking yourself what actually will happen. If I go and attack the queen, what is my opponent going to do? He'll capture my knight, I will capture back. What's the final position? Am I aware of everything, or am I missing something? So in this position, black, of course, has a winning scenario here because he simply had more power on that particular square. The move, however, was a very interesting idea. So we are going to go straight forward to the next example. And in this example, white has just played knight into the center of the board. You can notice that white is threatening the very nice looking royal fork on the next move, as well as white is offering seemingly a knight for free. So right now you should see that black can capture that knight. Now, if black does not think ahead, does not ask himself what's going to happen, if he just simply takes that knight and says, well, I might capture that knight since it's free, this is where white can be very happy, because what happens next, white goes all the way down to the back rank with his rook, and white has calculated that even after black captures with the rook, with the white recapture, it's a checkmate. So was this knight free? No. By capturing this knight, is it a miscalculation on black? Yes. So again, a calculation is your ability to think ahead and calculate as far as you can into the future of the game, as well as being aware of what the final position is and asking yourself what is going to happen if I do something. So if black captures that knight, it's a typical calculation mistake where black is not thinking ahead. And even if black thought that the back rank seems to be under control of his rook, that would still be not enough, because black has to calculate a little bit further just to see that white has actually controlled it with the double rooks. Okay, so we are going to go to the next position right now. So the next position was actually very interesting. White decided to push that pawn, okay, push that central pawn, and there's going to be a lot of action on this square. Right now, black decided to capture the knight as a defender of that pawn, and after white recaptures with the bishop following the rule of capture, all of a sudden, when black captures white pawn, white should realize that he cannot be capturing back anymore, because black has a lot of power on that square. So if white calculates, he should be able to see that he cannot capture the black pawn. So therefore, white just moves the bishop out of an attack, and black now pushes the pawn forward. So my first question to you, is this a calculated decision for black, or this is just a giving away the pawn for free? So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to think about it, and you guys should be able to figure it out. What would be the idea of this move? Has black planned something behind it into the future of this move? I hope you guys got this. So the correct answer is, this is not just a simple pawn giveaway for black. Black actually has a plan of of opening up his bishop, and when white captures the pawn for free, black recaptures another white pawn, and black has calculated even one more move ahead, that there wouldn't be a way for white to defend his rook in just next move. So that already was calculated for black as a part of calculation, and that's exactly why black is sacrificing that pawn. Now white sees that, doesn't fall for it, and pushes the pawn forward. Now black is kind of panicking because white didn't fall for the trick that black set up, and at the same time black pawn is under attack. So a very, very logical, simple move for black would be now defending that pawn with the knight. So now the queen cannot take that pawn. And my next question to you guys is, where is white's mistake in his thinking process? Where is white's thinking is wrong? So basically what white is saying right now, let me capture that knight and I win the pawn later on, because I remove that knight as a defender of the pawn, and so I get my pawn back. But what happens later is an unexpectedly unpleasant surprise for white, and so when white captures the knight, instead of capturing it with the bishop as white was planned, he did calculate a little bit, where he then wins the pawn. That was according to white's plan. Black all of a sudden has another option of capturing the pawn with the bishop, with the pawn, and now we can see that the pawn is still protected. So that's what white overlooked, that's what white miscalculated, and simply now white is still in trouble. Their strategy of winning that pawn did not work. So it shows how good of a move this knight defending the pawn is, but it also shows that before you do something, you really, really have to calculate what is going to happen and what your opponent is going to do. Very, very, very important. Okay? So this is an example of white not seeing multiple options that black can do, right? So now we're just going to finish off with the last puzzle that I have here. Okay? So in this position, we are going to be playing black. We are going to trade that central knight into a bishop, and when white pawn captures back following the rule of capture, black now has a very, very nice looking fork. So that's something that you guys probably familiar from the previous classes. So a nice looking fork, of course very uncomfortable for white, but all white had to do is move the queen one square back. At the same time, both pawn and bishop would have been protected, and so far still white is doing reasonably okay. Now instead, white, without really asking himself what's going to happen, without thinking about anything, he just immediately takes that knight as a natural reaction of dealing against an uncomfortable piece. You just capture him when somebody is attacking you. But what white didn't realize is that after the simple trade, white saw that the knight is protected, but what white probably miscalculated and didn't realize is that when black recaptures, all of a sudden the file for the rook opens widely, and there's a very, very powerful X-ray attack on the queen and king on the open file, and pretty much white is in trouble. Now there's one more move that white can do, just in case he saw that and he says, well, even if worst comes to worst, I'll just put my bishop as a shield and try to protect myself. But this is also an example of miscalculation, because white should have foreseen that with just a simple black pawn push as a pressure on the pin, now white will get in trouble. So again, this puzzle shows an importance of why we need to calculate and how to calculate. You need to think ahead, ask yourself what's going to happen, and preferably you have to be able to visualize and be aware of what the final position looks like. So I will give credit for white to if they saw all in advance that they can block the rook with the bishop, but again, even that sometimes wouldn't be enough if you stop your calculations too early, because if you just stop it one move earlier than what it's supposed to be, then all of a sudden you might be in trouble, and that can be the difference between you being in an okay position or the position is actually not very good. So White should not have captured that knight, and he should have calculated that and visualized that when he captures that knight, that open file that is going to be right in front of the queen will give a lot of problems. Okay, so this summarizes our lesson about the calculation, a very important part of the chess game, especially when you're playing against somebody who is good. You have to calculate. Answer all the questions. The purpose of this lesson is for you to understand what calculation is and how to calculate. And in all of these examples, I hope you understood what type of mistakes, miscalculating mistakes, one or the other side did. So let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll see you soon. This was Mr. A and calculation.